Dumelang Botswana ko gae, dumelang Botswana ko moseja, dumelang balotle. Hello and welcome to Strong People, Strong Leaders, a platform where we engage in discourse regarding what's happening to Botswana, in Botswana, and affecting Botswana. And we provide this commentary in a way that's easily digestible and accessible. And we hope that you enjoy our content, and we hope that you hit the like and subscribe buttons to follow us for more content. On October 30th, 2024, Botswana would take to the polls. They were making a decision on Botswana's political future based off of their experience during the tenure of Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi of the Botswana Democratic Party. In their individual capacities, they had their minds made up. But little did Botswana know that collectively, they had formed a consensus to give the umbrella for democratic change a chance to lead the country. And so in 2024, November 9th, Advocate Duma Gideon Boko would become president of Botswana. The big question is, how did we get here? And today, this episode attempts to answer that. Now, in order to understand the events of October 30th, 2024 in their fullest context, we have to take a step back, and in doing so, address the political landscape of Botswana and how it has led us here. This conversation will be framed from within the purview of 2009 to 2024. 2009 being a seminal watershed moment in which the faces of Botswana's current political landscape would emerge from the different pockets that they existed. It is important to note that, like any other place, Botswana's political landscape is not a monolith. There are personality clashes, there are ideological clashes that oftentimes have led to factions within parties and, in extreme cases, splinters in political parties. As early as 1965, the Bechuanaland People's Party splintered to form the Bechuanaland Independence Party. And most notably, in the early 2000s, the formation of the Botswana Congress Party as a splinter from the Botswana National Front is another example of this. However, the first splinter that we would see from the Botswana Democratic Party would occur in the year 2010. But before we get there, let us understand the emergence of the current faces of the political landscape. In 2009, Dumelang Salashando has defended successfully his incumbency as a member of parliament for his constituency and becomes a part of the 10th parliament. We see the emergence of Mokgweetsi Masisi as his first term in political office is situated as a member of parliament within the 10th parliament as well, while Mr. Ndaba was a preeminent organizer and advocate for the Botswana Democratic Party, though at the time he did not hold any political office within the national space. And likewise, Advocate Duma Boko as well did not hold any political office to that magnitude of Salashando or Mokgweetsi Masisi. But he was a prominent person within the Botswana National Front at the time. And lastly, Sesrata Kama Kama is inaugurated as the President of the Republic of Botswana. And it is these men whose faces begin to form the architecture of Botswana's political landscape, and the decisions not only by them but affecting them mold this direction in which we go to. For the purpose of brevity, I will abbreviate political party names, and as I'm talking, the visuals would also on the screen show these different abbreviations of what they mean. But if 2009 sets the pieces on the board or on the proverbial chessboard, it is 2009 and 2010 wherein the wheels set the events in motion. To begin with, on the Botswana Democratic Party side, or the BDP side, the 2009 Kenya Congress, wherein the Barata Party faction and the A-Team faction contest for the Central Committee elections, Barata Party would sweep all the executive positions. And in response, Sesrata Kama Yankama, or for the purposes of this conversation will be referred to as Ski, would decide to appoint people unilaterally to other positions within the party as a means to neutralize the Barata Party faction, as he was a supporter of the A-Team faction. And in doing so, the Secretary General, Humulumo Motsoaledi, believed that that was out of order, and he queried it within the political party structure. However, this led to a suspension, and his counter was to file a lawsuit against the president of the party, that is Ski, in order to reverse the decisions that he had made that were deemed to be unconstitutional according to the party's mandate. However, due to the presidential immunity clause, the High Court as well as the Court of Appeal would dismiss the claim by Humulumo Motsoaledi against Ski in that point. And unfortunately, in that process, not only was Humulumo Motsoaledi suspended from the party, other members of the Central Committee were also suspended, as well as other members of the Barata Party faction, including Mr. Ndaba Haulat. Following these suspensions, a contingent from the Barata Party faction meet to discuss a possible exit from the Botswana Democratic Party. In the process, Asata Dada is commissioned by Ski to go and mediate and negotiate with this contingent regarding their possible defection from the Botswana Democratic Party. However, it is their non-negotiables that to Sesrata Kama Yankama or Ski make this process untenable. The most critical non-negotiables were that, one, all Central Committee members who were suspended from the party be reinstated to their positions. Two, that all the people who were appointed by unilateral decision by Ski would also be removed from their positions. As Ski felt this would compromise his power within the party, he refused, and as a result, the Botswana Movement for Democracy was then formed in May of 2010. And that begins the first fracture of the Botswana Democratic Party. Within the same time period, we see the ascension of Dumelang Saleshando, to be referred to as Saleshando, to the presidency of the Botswana Congress Party, or the BCP, while Advocate Dumaboko, to be referred to now as Boko, would ascend to the party presidency of the Botswana National Front, referred to as the BNF. Following this period of 2009 and 2010, we get into now the established Kama years. And in the Kama years, we see a consolidation of power by Sesrata Kama. To give this significance, understand that he's Lieutenant General Sesrata Kama, Yankama, therefore meaning that he is a military man. And within the military construct, it is a chain of command. And so therefore his mode of operation was situated within a military construct, although he was operating within a civilian context. And that, in some ways, explains predominantly how he governed during his tenure. And in doing so, during this time, he's consolidating his power and, to the greatest extent, managing the people within the spaces and access to power in that. And an immediate aftermath of this is that the Botswana Movement for Democracy, BMD, becomes the opposition or the official opposition in parliament, as those who defected as part of the exile from the BDP also defected with their positions as members of parliament. And therefore in 2012, given the history of struggling of the opposition, the umbrella for democratic change is proposed. And the first parties to join are the BMD, the BNF, and the Botswana People's Party, the BPP. And in the lead up to the 2014 election, the UDC does surprisingly well, winning 17 seats compared to the BDP's 37 and the BCP's 3. And this to total 57 constituencies at the time. Following this election in 2014, due to some differences within the BMD, we see the formation of the Alliance for Progressives, which is not only a fracture from the BMD, but also has some people from the BDP trickle within its ranks to form this new political party that is now under the guidance of Ndaba Haolate. And that is where he now ascends as a formative member of the opposition leadership within the country. And in 2017, very seminal moment in BDP happens, and that is the Tonota Congress, where Mokgweetsi Masisi, to be referred to as Masisi, is now appointed as the president of the party in accordance to Ski's preferences. In 2019, leading up to the election, Sethra Takama, as per constitutional requirement, has to step down about 6 months before the election, and Mokgweetsi Masisi takes over as the interim president leading up to the election. And immediately within that transitory phase, Mokgweetsi Masisi takes the decision to systematically minimize the privileges that Sethra Takama would experience, or was used to experiencing under, his tenure as president. And in frustration of, this, banana in the tailpipe situation, so to speak, he forms the Botswana Patriotic Front, or the BPF, in 2019, July to be specific. And that is a few months before the elections. And this, in his estimation, was a calculated move that was designed to destabilize the Botswana Democratic Party, which, some might argue it did, in some respects, as the BPF would come out and win 3 seats, but also have members from the BDP defect as well to the BPF in that process. Although it did not have the magnitude of effect that Ski would have hoped, as in his consolidation of power during his tenure, he had alienated a lot of BDP people, and a lot of the BDP quote-unquote eldership were also not willing to leave the institution, as they felt that the institution could be revitalized and be revamped. So then you have this stage set for the rise of Mokgweetsi Masisi as he wins the 2019 election. and now is cemented as the President of the Republic of Botswana. The next phase of this conversation is regarding the tenure of Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi and its effect on Botswana. In July of 2020, following the election, the floor crossing bill is passed. And it is important that recall in 2010 when the splinter of the Botswana Democratic Party happens and the BMD is formed, that move resulted in the BMD being the leader of the opposition. And because already within Masisi's tenure, there was friction and factions within the party, the passing of the floor crossing bill was a means to minimize the movement of defectors from the BDP to other political parties, as the bill stated that those who defect would then relinquish their position, and therefore that would cause for re-election within that constituency. And so that first piece of legislature shows a very guarded approach and very one-sided approach to leveling the playing field, so to speak, in that direction. But of course, in the midst of this, COVID-19 happens in 2020 with Botswana enacting the state of emergency for the period May 2020 to August 2022. So for 2 years, state of emergency was in place, in which the president could exercise executive powers unencumbered during this process. And it was the state of emergency that caused a lot of issues, as there were concerns around fiscal mismanagement, there were concerns around inconsistent governance practices, in that one of the major critiques had been that from a policy perspective, we did not have an agenda in Botswana concerning what the short-term, medium-term, long-term goals of the state of emergency were, insofar as either alleviating the burdens of COVID-19, either addressing health and safety issues, either addressing economic resurgence, to that effect. So for those 2 years, a lot of money was spent without a very clear indicator of what the expenditures were for and what the justifications for those expenditures were. Another emerging issue was the government programs, and the proliferation of different government programs that were set to, in essence, contribute to socioeconomic development. Some of these programs were redundant in that they overlapped each other. For example, Tuo Letoto was in some ways a reflection of other government programs that were in place to support farmers, or could have been organized differently. Or Chema Chema, which is an informal sector financing program, which also could have been organized better as well. And you had the Forbes 2022, 2023, 2024 hosted in Botswana, which was a very expansive expenditure, right? When there were other competing priorities such as education, where in 2020 sporting programs and extracurricular activities in schools were indefinitely suspended, as there was contention between the teachers' unions and the government regarding financial compensation for those non-teaching or non-academic activities. And so there is this discourse on, again, unclear priorities and programming that is essentially stretching the resources of the government thin. Another critical thing was the implosion of the Botswana Democratic Party within the last year and a half, right? Where the factions became not only detrimental to the party, but also in some instances caused, worrying situations that could have led to violence. And most importantly, it was during the primary elections where there was a lot of discord around the rules and the protocols and the procedures on determining who was eligible to run for office, who was, favored by the, establishment, and all these different things created a level of mistrust within the organization that undermined severely its public reputation within the country. And in parallel to that, we see a reorganization of the UDC as the Botswana Congress Party exits this association in 2019, as it had been a part of the UDC then, and the Alliance for Progressive joins them in the 2020s as part of the broader coalition for the UDC. And so we now see Tumaboko and Nabahalati in this joint effort to run the UDC while the BCP stands alone as an opposition party. And then the creme de la creme was the Constitutional Review debacle, wherein a Constitutional Review Commission was put together. Again, there wasn't a clear process and protocol on how the committee was put together, as well as the more pressing issues around the final report that negated and rejected the input that was critical from the public, among them most notably being the the separate election of a president versus a president being decided by majority rules of the first past the post system. But also more sinisterly was the expansion, or at least the desired expansion of the specially elected seats in parliament, which would therefore slant the majorities in a way that would undercut any sort of opposition power within the parliament regarding bills to be passed, as well as the proposal of a morality clause that would be used against a member of parliament who was behaving in an undesirable way. So, and these particular recommendations were not sourced from public discourse, which became problematic in how the report was presented to Parliament and the constitutional amendments that were therefore proposed to Parliament, right? And so in this instance of this blatant disregard for democratic and political process and political, propriety, Botswana are left to wonder if at all a second term for the Masisi government would be a stab in the back to democracy. And lastly, the leaked documentation that showed campaign financing towards the BDP in many ways eroded public trust and essentially was the straw that broke the camel's back. And so now we're back to election day. What happens? UDC, without the BCP this time, moves to having 36 parliamentary seats, with the BCP getting 16, the BPF getting 5, the BDP getting 4, and having 1 independent vote, right? And this is such a stark change from the 2019 results where UDC had 15 and BDP had 38. So BDP lost 34 seats in this election cycle. And it was a mind-blowing victory. Now, where do we go from here? It is almost 100 days since the UDC has taken office, and we are at a point where we have heard the promises from the UDC, not only from their manifesto, but from the inauguration speech, as well as the State of the Nation address. And with the budget speech having been presented a few days ago, that there's a lot that's been laid on the table, not only for the 100 days, for this upcoming fiscal year, but projected for the next 5 years. The UDC is a new party with a new mission, and we are yet to see what a government made in their image looks like. There are a lot of questions to be answered, a lot of hopes that are leaning and praying that the UDC would take Botswana in a different direction. Over the following episodes, we will address an analysis of the inauguration speech and the State of the Nation address, as well as reflect on the first 100 days of this administration, including the budget speech and other sedentary issues. In his inauguration speech, His Excellency Duma Boko stated that on the 30th of October, 2024, Botswana's democracy stood untested and unbroken. And that on that day, Botswana's democracy passed its test with flying colors. So now that we've passed the test, will the results show a competency of the new regime? Or are we going to see same party, different color? Or rather, same politics, different color? That is for time to tell. Now that Botswana has passed this test, what will become of the next 5 years? That we're yet to see. And on this channel, we are excited to bring you a play-by-play situational analysis of what will transpire over the next 5 years. Thank you for tuning in.